I'm thinking,
we're watching Beth.
We're really festive looking here, aren't we?
It's good to be colorful.
It really is.
Okay.
Welcome to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. I'll be tonight's host, and with us we have Beth Rothman from the Citizens Election Program in Hartford. And Beth's first of all going to refresh our memories. We've had a lot of shows over the summer and the fall and the winter about public campaign financing. But first of all, Beth, tell me about the program, what its intent was, how it came into being.
Well, thank you, David, and it's very nice to be here. The program was created basically in the wake of great and unfortunate corruption in the state, when the legislature took a very bold step forward, and the Governor Rowe was right there, essentially saying we need to change the way politics happen in the state. Mm-hmm. We have to give people an alternative to getting high-dollar contributions, looking around for money for special interests, and essentially change the way that people come into elected office, which many of us believe is the way that we really change the underpinnings of democracy. So the Citizens Election Program was passed. It allows people to collect small contributions from individuals. And once they've done that and met a qualifying threshold, they're able to get the rest of their financing from the state. So it's called public financing. It's a voluntary program. You don't have to use it. But the belief is that if you do it, you're actually running free from special interests. You're relying on individuals that you're seeking to represent, and you're actually part of returning government to the people of Connecticut.
And as I understand it, in the first go-round, and as the audience knows from me mentioning it 1 or 2 or 20 times, I was part of that program. What percentage of people running for office in Connecticut that were eligible for it, what percentage of them took advantage of that public financing in 2008?
We saw an astonishing 75% of candidates seeking legislative office use the program. And what's really amazing about that is that for the first run of a completely voluntary program, that's never happened. Usually, maybe a third of the candidates will use it. People will want to wait, let it be around a while. Here we saw this incredible support right out of the box by candidates, including you. And it's nice to be on with a participating candidate. I hope you'll choose to use the program again. And it's really a great thing because a voluntary program, of course, depends on having candidates who want to sign up and use it. It can be scary to make history and essentially use an entirely new program, and yet we saw a lot of brave, talented candidates like yourself willing to do that.
Thank you.
So it helped make it a success, I believe.
Well, the history of public financing, it goes back to, I believe, actually Maine and Arizona were the first 2 states to use public financing, and they were, in a sense, or were they the role models for the Connecticut program?
Well, they were. They absolutely were. I mean, Maine and Arizona are the 2 other states with comparable programs, although I'll say that the state of Connecticut decided to do its own thing, so the program is different from the Maine or Arizona programs, but those are really our comparison points.
You wanted me to read something, and I'm not going to be shy. I'll read it. Some testimony I gave. Did you want me to read some of that?
Well, I have to say that one of the things that we've all been very focused on in the state, of course, is the deficit. The Citizens Election Program has certainly faced a lot of challenges holding on to the funding to run the program in light of the deficit. We believe that the investment in the democratic process is crucial, that it's a small fraction of the, less than 1% of the state deficit, but you would offer testimony at our post-election hearings where you talked about that. I thought did it very well, and thought it might be nice to have a participating candidate share that.
Well,
so up to you whether or not you want to read it, but you probably know what you said.
I'm probably going to be redundant, but before I look at it again, because I haven't seen it in quite some time.
Sure.
But the program seemed to be at the time a very good investment of a small amount of money, a very inexpensive way to clear corruption out of the process, the electoral process in Connecticut, where before I noted, amongst others, my opponent in the race had gotten his money from essentially bankers, insurance companies, real estate investment people. And not to say that to pick on one individual running for office that was getting money. It was just the system. It was the way business was done in Connecticut, and everybody that was up until that point, kind of had to go with the flow. So I can't really fault anybody for doing it that way before then. But I'll note that both my opponent and I in the 107th 2 years ago took advantage of the program, took good advantage of the program, gathered in the small contributions that we got from regular folks, and because of that, we were able to keep that lobbyist money out of the picture. Because as I recall, we could not accept any donations from lobbyists, relatives of lobbyists. A lot of people that had been giving money before to elections to candidates were pretty much shut out of the system. They were pretty much shut out of the process. And it made for, I think, a very good program. I'll read a little bit of it. Okay, this goes back to December 5th, 2008, right after the election was over. My name is David Stevenson. I live in Bethel, and I'm a full-time real estate professional. In May of this year, I was asked to seek the office of state representative, and I took on a second full-time career for the following 6 months. I had the pleasure of many great neighborhood discussions with voters in the 107th District. I conducted a spirited race against David Scribner, a good and decent person whose voting record I disagreed with. My experience is one which I would greatly recommend to anyone with a strong will, lots of energy, and a wonderful, supportive family. My wife Diane was and continues to be incredible. The process also brought many young adults in the process, people like Sal Liccione, who managed my campaign, and Michael Gradia, Nick Allred, Bob Garavell, James Root, and many others who campaigned door-to-door with me by foot or by bicycle. Today's volunteers are tomorrow's candidates. Okay, that's enough of that. But let's get back. It's a little schmaltzy from that point on. But essentially, I felt a whole new sense about politics that I'd never felt before. And a lot of us that ran for the first time would not have run if not for the fact that we didn't have to concentrate on having fundraisers. I mean, we really had a very limited amount of time spent gathering in small donations to reach that 5,000 plateau for state representative, for example. Yeah. And we got to spend really, in fact, like at least 80, 90% of our time going door to door, talking to voters about issues. It became an issue-oriented campaign. It really was springtime in Connecticut in a lot of respects. How do you remember it?
Well, it's always great to hear participating candidates say that but for the program they couldn't have seen themselves doing this, because I think that is really one of the main things this program is designed for, to bring new people into the democratic process at the same time as having the existing people who are already in elected office have another alternative. So they may have been used to going to certain fundraisers where they very quickly raised large dollars organized by lobbyists and people with other connections to the state. Now, here's your alternative. You've got to go into your districts, get small dollar contributions, because for a change, those $5 contributions are what really matters.
Yeah, and I got a ton of those $5 contributions, and it really was exciting.
Yeah.
And a lot of the folks that gave me $5 actually ended up giving me literally 100 hours of their time over the course of the campaign. Yeah. And you can't measure what it would cost to buy somebody's 100 hours. I mean, this was time freely given. Candidates on both sides of the aisle all of a sudden had volunteers out there that were excited about the political process again. The process went from being one of politics stinks to politics can be a very useful means of getting things accomplished.
And that's such an amazing transformation to have happened here in Connecticut that had been dubbed not so affectionately Corrupticate, and had seen tremendous scandal and basically had the sense among citizens that we had the best government money could buy. So, jump ahead less than 5 years after this huge scandal rocked Connecticut, and we have candidates, elected officials, citizens saying overwhelmingly they actually think something has really started to change in Connecticut, and that's an amazing thing.
And as you mentioned, the Arizona program and the Maine program, they really, it was fits and starts for them. This was a very seamless transition from from the old system to the new system in Connecticut. You mentioned 75% of the candidates that ran became part of this new system, this new means of doing business politically in Connecticut, and new means of candidates being able to spend their time with voters rather than with fundraisers.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that actually now, given the timing and that we're in late April, looking on to May, we're looking ahead towards 2010. This is probably also the time to make sure that people watching this show know that the program is voluntary. It's here for candidates who might be interested in running for office for 2010. It gives people an opportunity to do a small amount of fundraising and have the rest of their funds come from the state. And Connecticut we've seen additional competition in the last election from what we saw before, but it is a state where we need to continue to bring new blood into the process. We need to keep having new candidates join the system, and I hope some of your viewers who may be on the fence about seeking office will actually learn a little bit more. They can look at the Citizens Election Program on our website. And I offered also a copy of our report about the first run, which is Connecticut Reclaiming Democracy. Can tell basically candidates and potential candidates a little bit more about the program. We're doing trainings. We give people lots of hands-on help, as I'm sure you know. And we really want this to be something where people don't have to be afraid to run for office in the state, and they don't feel like they have to be wealthy or particularly well connected to do it.
And I would encourage people from across the political spectrum, no matter what your views are on the issues, this is all about working together, finding compromise, solving problems. Anybody across the political spectrum, regardless of party, to get involved. If you're thinking about running for office and you have that urge to do that, for God's sakes, get involved in this process. I think we're going to see quite a few primaries this year in the different districts and different towns, which I think people complain about primaries sometimes as being wasteful. But you know what? It does a couple of good things. It gives candidates a chance to hone their beliefs and what they stand for, at least in the eyes of the voters, and it gives the voters a better chance of understanding the issues. And
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because Connecticut hasn't historically seen a lot of primaries, and historically Connecticut hasn't had a lot of seats contested in the General Assembly race. It's an area where we have to improve. But in the first run of the program, we saw a really marked increase in the number of primaries. It's still low compared to the 187 seats, but we really did see an increase. And while some people have actually used that as a chance to criticize the program, I've actually tried to remind people that that's actually part of what the program is supposed to do, to give additional opportunities for people to have their voices heard, to have different opinions heard, and give additional competition. So we saw a good step forward, and I think we may keep moving in the right direction in 2010.
Well, I think the fact that you're having primaries is an indication that there are more people that are actually interested in becoming part of the process. And in addition to that, you bring in a lot of volunteers. I mean, when people see that elections are being run cleanly, you see young kids, particularly, or older folks like me, they get involved in the process, doing door-to-door and just enjoying the whole process rather than it becoming so entrenched. Now we only have public financing for limited offices in Connecticut. This will be the first time that we have it for the gubernatorial race.
Yes.
But do you see potentially the future for having that on a municipal level? Because I'll go ahead and then I'll explain why.
Well, it's interesting. I definitely think it's possible. Always the issue is going to come down to whether the funding is available at the municipal level, both for giving out the funds and whether the municipalities have sort of the availability to have the resources to do the oversight that goes along with giving out public money, because you have to do a certain amount of training and outreach, and a certain amount of regulation has to go along with it. But from my background, I actually came from a public financing program in New York City, so I'm a big fan of municipal public financing, and it's definitely something that I'm interested in looking at in Connecticut.
Well, the reason why I brought that up is because I've been involved in some of the audits across the state of municipal elections. And what I found, and not to pick on Wilton, but Wilton had eight offices open for vote last year. And of those 8 offices, the minority party in Wilton only put a candidate up for one of those 8 offices.
Picture. The picture, the graphic.
What about it?
Look, we need to get the graphic up.
Well, this graphic here?
Yeah, not that. We got the graphic to put up.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, good. Okay. So should I wait while the graphic's up?
Your show.
Okay. I'll keep on talking. So at any rate, so in Wilton, and not to pick on Wilton because, you know, I see it all over the state, is that you had 8 offices up for grabs, and the minority party in Wilton only ran one candidate for one of those 8 offices. And you had, for instance, for first selectman, 35% of the people that came out to vote, that took the time to actually come to the polls to vote, did not cast a vote for the candidate, the one candidate for first selectman. For the Board of Education, which had two open spots, you had 2 people running from the majority party in Wilton and 0 from the minority party. And there were between 40 and 45% of the people that took the time to come out and cast a ballot. 45% of them did not write in those 2 candidates that were the only candidates on the ballot. Now, what that says to me, that if the minority party had put anybody up as a candidate without any time spent actually even campaigning, they would have gotten, let's say, 30, 35, maybe 40% of the vote without even any effort. And yet they chose not to. And a lot of times in the towns in Connecticut, one party will concede races to the other party, and we end up with a one-party system in a town, which is really sad because, I mean, that's just not democracy at its best. Well, on the other side, having the primaries in different races, I think, is democracy at its best. We have multiple layers of contests to determine who is the best qualified candidate for the job.
I would agree with you. I mean, I think having people speaking about what their issues are, even if an incumbent has done a terrific job, I don't think that it does anything but advance the process to have somebody have to speak about their records, speak about their votes, be challenged, and maybe they'll be successful, maybe they won't. But I think that the additional voices, the additional choices, the options for the citizens, and then at a very basic level, the opportunity for citizens to get involved both as volunteers and as meaningful donors at giving only $5 is really transformative for the state elections, and I definitely can see that making a difference down the road for municipal elections.
Point well taken, and I think that it sounds like what you're saying is what I kind of think intrinsically and intuitively, is that if somebody's in office and unchallenged for a long period of time, human nature being what it is, they're going to get lazy. Being challenged is a good thing to keep fresh thoughts and fresh ideas coming forward. That regardless of the party, that somebody that's entrenched for a long period of time and is never challenged is going to get, for lack of a better word, lazy.
Well, I think, to some extent, I'm sure it can depend on the individual. I think there's some true public servants who are going to do the exact same job regardless of whether they're challenged or not. And I think there are other people who have probably become too used to not being challenged, that they have started to see their position in the legislature as more of an entitlement than something that they really need to respond to the citizens of Connecticut about every 2 years. So I'm sure we have a balance of the two, but nonetheless, I think that elections offer that meaningful opportunity for there to really be a dialogue for the citizens, and if there's no opposition, then you have less of that meaningful opportunity.
Let's look forward to the future, and let's presume that at least in this election we have public campaign financing. Where do we go from there? How do we expand it? How do we keep the momentum going? What do we need to change? I know we understand we have minority parties, the Green Party particularly, that challenged the law for the playing field not being level, and I think a lot of my friends that are Democratic and Republican Party agreed with that the level playing field wasn't there and needs to be improved and modified. And I think even the legislature is starting to deal with some of those things to make it a better system. Where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, I have to say, first off, that you know, it was very important that we got off to a good start, and I think we did in 2008, because now we find ourselves in this incredible budget crisis, and yet, while we certainly have been cut, we're still here. We're still here. We still have the budget that we need to get through the 2010 elections. And I say all that because I think that, from my perspective, I think we can keep getting stronger, keep bringing new people into the process, keep moving forward, make the law better, address the issues raised in the decision, and there are a lot of good ways to do that pending before the legislature right now. But I think the good news is that there would be a lot of excuses to get rid of the program, and that hasn't been done. There have been some attempts, but they've never worked. We're still here, we're ready for 2010, and making it through this period with the court case, the deficit battles, several millionaire candidates, and all the uncertainty surrounding the court decision, and still being strong, I think means we're here to stay.
That's a very good sign. That's a very good, and I'm always reminded by the young people that did door-to-door for me last time around that today's door-to-door volunteers are tomorrow's candidates.
I think you're absolutely right.
And I saw a lot of that, and it was very heartening to me to see kids. Well, I say kids because I'm 56, and I probably said that on about 20 or 30 different shows, but. The 20-year-olds, even the 30-year-olds, and sometimes even the 40-year-olds that have not been involved in the political process and kind of soured on it a little bit, to be excited about something again, to be excited about public service, and then get involved. I know, for instance, Matt Wagner down in Fairfield is now the Registrar of Voters in Fairfield. Got involved in this whole process, and there's a very good sense about giving something back to your community, whether it be through one of the low-paying jobs, would be like a legislator or a representative or a senator, or some of the more moderate-paying jobs, which by Connecticut standards aren't really very high-paying jobs. But you get a lot back by serving the good of the people and being out there and listening and learning and being part of the process.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it's been very exciting to hear candidates and a lot of individuals around the state saying that the program has really given them the opportunity to run, or that they're thinking about running for the first time ever because of the program. It's very exciting to hear more people getting involved. I think that happened in 2008. I think we're going to see even more of that in 2010, and that's really what the program is here for. So it's a great sign, and it's a great step forward for the state of Connecticut.
So big thumbs up for Connecticut. Go Connecticut.
Big thumbs up.
Is it a story?
A story.
And we're going to hear all about a story right now. Seth Lefferts.